Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, welcome back to the channel. If this is your first time here, my name is Sal, and today what I'm going to be doing is just small game strategy for DFS. So this is going to be, depending on when you're watching, this is going to be very prevalent for this upcoming NFC AFC Championship, the Conference Championship weekend in the NFL 2018-2019 season. But again, you could be watching this whenever based on the title of it, because it's going to be small game strategy. It'll differentiate a little bit for different sports, but the main concepts I'm trying to hit on here are going to be highlighted in MLB, NBA, and NFL, all these different sports. It's going to be the same concepts, right? They're going to be general concepts and maybe with a little bit of tweaks. But yeah, overall, small game strategy, how you guys can differentiate yourself in these smaller game slates. It's tough. I'd rather have a main slate. The smaller game slates, I mean, all slates usually are fun, even showdown slates. We're going to be focused on 2-game slates here. But I'd rather have a main slate, 4+ games, especially in the NFL when you can get up to 10, MLB, NBA, all their double digits. It's a lot better, right? You got more players to choose from. But you can set yourself apart from some of the public players who are just jumping into these small contests, playing everybody that they can fit in, that they just know the name of, really. And you can really differentiate yourself here because you can find value in some of these tips that I'm about to give you. Don't know how many it's going to be at the end of it, maybe 5, 6, 7, I don't know. But we're just going to talk about those quickly. Right here I am on Draftkings, and actually, if this is not your first time here, you're noticing something different. It's a mini-me, right? It's a cutout of me. Got a little green screen action going. So, yeah, we're growing a little bit as the channel grows, investing a little bit more in it and trying to do some different cool things. So let me know what you think of this little mini-me that we got going on over here. See, I got hands, but that's about it, right? I'm just a little guy on this little screen now. I'm excited to see it, right? I haven't seen myself like this yet. So that'll be fun. If this is your first time here, please consider subscribing. Depending on when you're watching this right now, we're trying to hit 1,500 subscribers. We're about 100 or so away from there. I want to do that by the end of the week. If we can get a little push right there, that'd be great. So I appreciate that. Also, check out some things in the description below. I'm giving away a free guide on how to be more optimal, how to be more actually optimal contrarian. Optimal contrarian is what I would like to call it. Set yourself apart and embrace uncertainty so you can win more when things don't go the way the public plans, which doesn't happen as often as people expect things to happen, right? So there's a free PDF. I wrote 9 pages down below. A lot of people have said great things about it. You can join the Facebook group as well. We have a great community growing in there. Also the Discord. All those things are below in the description. Some promo codes I'm getting for you guys as well down there. So make sure to check those out. But let's break down into these tips, right? So we're on DraftKings here. We have 2 games. Depending on when you're watching, this could be in the past. You know who wins. Good for you. If right now I don't, right? So the first thing that I want to talk about is Vegas, right? And if you guys are seasoned at all a little bit in DFS, you know that Vegas is big, and you know that looking into the lines and it can determine things, such as if you're a running back on the road and your team's a big underdog, probably not a good spot to play you. But if you're that running back on the team that's the big home favorite, it's a pretty good spot to play probably, right? So those are just situations where you're playing a team for the second time. Vegas can kind of bake in some things with the line and player props, all that. So the 2 big things for Vegas that I want to point out on small game slates is number 1, player props. So if we go over to Fantasy Labs here, we can go down to their player prop tool, and I'm pretty sure this is free for everybody. Okay, so there's no player props available for this day. So let's just change the date. Okay, so this is the NFL. So this is because if we go back a week, this is because they don't have their props out yet because it's early in the week. I'm filming this on a Tuesday. You can see now if you come down here to like last week, you're going to get some of the player props. So what they do is they take up all the player props, Fantasy Labs, and I'm not an affiliate or anything. I just use it as of right now. I'm not no affiliate. But they just take all the player props from different sites. They come up with their own, and it's kind of like a dashboard. You can see all the player props. Why is this important? Well, Vegas is so good at predicting things, right? And the market really is so good at predicting things. People say, oh, Vegas is so good. Vegas is putting out the initial lines, and then, yeah, they're usually pretty spot on, but then the market kind of adjusts it and cements them. That's why the lines are most of the time closer to that exact total than not, right? Hear somebody in a barbershop or somewhere saying, how does Vegas do it? They set an initial line, but the sharps, the good sports bettors, just like a stock market, people's buying and selling of that price, it determines it and it sets it in place. But that's a whole nother story. Betting videos should be coming soon as well, actually. I'll probably do one for this weekend, maybe even, for this NFC, AFC championships. But the whole thing about Vegas props is keep an eye on them because they're usually pretty good. And that's something that you might already know, but it's also important on 2-game slates. Really look at where the Vegas props are. Some people are going to be jumping on guys who maybe, like Sony Michel, for this instance, he went off with 3 touchdowns over 100 yards last week. What are his Vegas props? If they're lower than some other guys on there and you're trying to decide, that's a good indication that Vegas doesn't think he's going to have that great of a game, or at least compared to some other people on the slate. Make sure you're checking out player props. You don't have to just do it on Fantasy Lab. There's lots of different avenues. I just like the dashboard that they have here. The second thing that I'll bring up is the lines moving. So right now there's only 4 teams playing, right? A 2-game slate in the NFL or whatever sport it might be that you're watching. It's NBA, MLB, NHL. When there's 2-game slates and there's a line movement, that's pretty big because that doesn't happen that often. So what that means if there's a line movement is that the public likes a team so much that there's too much leverage on one side of the game, so Vegas has to move the line to try and get people to get attracted to the other side of it, right? So what you should do there is if you're seeing that there's a line movement, it's going to mean that the public likes, say, for this weekend between the Saints and the Rams, if the Saints are a 3-game favorite, or a 3-point favorite, excuse me, they're a 3-point favorite this weekend, and the line then somehow moves to the Saints being a 4-game favorite, that means that there's a lot of public money coming in on the Rams in that situation, or on the Saints in that situation. It's pushing it more in their favor, so people kind of jump off of it. So what you would do there is then you would say, if people like the Saints this week, that means they're definitely going to translate over into DFS, and they're going to like a lot of the Saints players, Alvin Kamara, Michael Thomas. They're going to like these players as well, so it's inflated, right? Most of the time the public loses. Vegas wins more than the public by a lot. They've won however many consecutive months in a row, like 30 out of however many months in a row. It's nuts. So you kind of want to just side with Vegas there and say, okay, if everybody's going to put their money on this team and use their players, now we have a little bit of an edge here. This is a spot where we can start to be contrarian and start to kind of build up our own differentiated type of player pool. And again, it doesn't have to be everybody you don't have to not play players in the Saints, right? They're good players. It's just keeping that in mind that there's also options elsewhere. And also keeping in mind that a lot of people like these players. So that's one way to also build ownership as well. But that's a strategy to definitely keep in mind. So number 2, a strategy is something that I talk about all the time on this. You have a 2-game slate. You got to leave money on the table. It's probably easy to leave money on the table because it's a 2-game slate. You could build lineups that way. Usually these are softer slates. It's kind of lends you to leave money on the table. But again, I've showed it in the PDF below. These are some of the tips that I talk about. But if we want to go here to contest dashboard, we can see how people are stacking their games, right? And we can see how much money that they're actually leaving on the table. So again, Fantasy Labs, I believe this is all free, salary distribution. So let's see what we got here. So this was last week. This is the playoffs. I don't want to really hit on the playoffs. Can we change the week? That would be great. Yes, we can. So let's go back now to the regular season, say. Random week in the regular season, 12-16, and we'll go to salary distribution. So on a main game slate, a lot of times you're going to see people trying to spend as much money as they can because there's a lot of players. You can kind of fit it all in so it works well. And yeah, look at this. So this was whatever week of the NFL season, December 16th. I think it was like week 15 or 16 of 2018. And you can see 50% of the field spending all of their money. That's insane. Almost 75% of the field is leaving $100 or less on the table. And then if we go up to here, we're seeing almost 90% of the field is spending $200 or leaving only $200 less on the table. So if you just leave $300 or less on average, and this is just this specific week, so it's a small sample, but I've looked at these a ton, and it's usually pretty close to these numbers, 80 to 90%. If you're leaving a little more than that on the table, you're going to differentiate yourself. People who have $500 or more was only 2%. And again, not a lot of people are doing it because they're scared of having that much money on the table. They think they're missing out. And if you look at some of the winners on main tournaments, they're probably not spending $500, or they're probably leaving less than $500 on the table, maybe spending all their money, but that's only because 80% of the field is doing it and 2% isn't, so it's very unlikely for somebody to win, or at least it's not as unlikely for somebody to win. It's probably similarly likely. You just don't see it as much because if there's 100 people, if 80 of them are playing a certain way and only 2 are playing a certain way, there's a very good chance that those 2 won't be there in the end just because it's so hard already, and you're having a different type of build, so those people kind of outweigh you in terms of placing in the field and things like that. But if 80% of the field have $500 or more on the table, you'd see them more. So this is obviously a main game slate. It's not a strategy that translates exactly to the 2-game slate, but it does in some regards, right? There's going to be people not leaving or not spending as much money, and sometimes lineup construction doesn't let you spend all the money, right? You'd rather not play a 3,700 guy who doesn't play at all if that gets you to spend all the money. You'd rather build your lineup a different way, and that's what we see happening a lot. But make sure, like, go ahead and leave $1,000 on the table. Sounds like a lot of money, but it's really just the difference between the highest priced defense or the second highest priced defense and that last priced defense. And in the playoffs, defensive pricing really doesn't matter that much because at this point, you're going to get all good quarterbacks. It'd be rare if you didn't. This week we do. or on 2-game slates, I shouldn't even just say just the playoffs, but at least for NFL, if we're talking this specific moment, you're getting all good quarterbacks. If we're talking MLB, NBA, you might not have, you're not going to deal with defense or anything, right? But in defense, that's just a difference for the NFL. It could be the difference between a mid-tier and a mid to higher tier pitcher in MLB. NBA, just a different type of role player. Whatever it might be with the same type of usage. Leaving money on the table is an optimal way to kind of go about things, right? I have some points here. I want to look at the next one. So yeah, the first one is, or actually this is the third one, the first one on that list over there though. The next one is to make a stand and embrace uncertainty. It's okay to feel scared, right? You probably should be scared. If you haven't won any big tournaments yet, and I'm not going to sit here and say that I have won a 6-figure tournament or anything like that, it's probably because, one, you haven't done this for a while, right? Two, you're not like as into it yet, or you're just kind of throwing your money in without being smart with your money, so you kind of fade out quicker. But also, you're not making stands and you're not doing things others won't. It's okay to be scared about your lineup or worry a little bit. That's probably good. If you're too comfortable about your lineup, it probably means it's not going to hit. And there's times where you can talk yourself into being comfortable using data and things like that, and that's okay. But if you don't have a guy in your lineup that you're like, ooh, and don't just play any bum at the min price or just people who aren't on the field or aren't on the court, whatever it might be, don't do that. Like, have educated plays that other people aren't playing and be like, okay, this one scares me, but if it hits, it's going to hit big. So make a stand somewhere, embrace uncertainty on these smaller game slates. Like for the NFL this weekend, Rex Burkhead, for those of you who don't know who he is, if you're not watching this for NFL reasons, he's a third down, or listening to this, I should say, on the audio version. Make sure you check that out if you're still watching. Audio version is taken off, and it's been great. The Sal Vetri Show. Hello, audio listeners. We love you so much. But yeah, so make sure that you're taking stands with these people, because Rex Burkhead, a guy who's the third overall back on the Patriots this week, he's not going to garner any ownership, but he's still going to maybe touch the ball 8 to 10 times, 6 to 8 to 10 times, right in that range. And on small game slates, if he breaks one or potentially two of those for a touchdown, which he does get some goal line usage, red zone usage, he's already the nuts, right? You like have to have him in that situation. Again, these are thin situations, probably stuff I won't do, but that's also a situation where you're going to play Rex Burkhead and you're not going to feel comfortable, right? And that can lend you to being optimal elsewhere in your lineup. And if he does anything on a 2-game slate, it can lend you to just automatically cashing and potentially winning a lot more. So that's a third tip, is just make a stand. You have to make a stand somewhere in your lineups. Don't try and make 30 different lineups and not make a stand somewhere and just try and play it safe. Make a stand in some kind of lineups, whether you're making 30 lineups, you want to enter 5 Rex Burkheads, 10, overweight the field, whatever it is, you got to make a stand somewhere in your lineups. All right, so next one up. Flex creativity I have on there. So yeah, flex creativity we could check for this exact same week. Position usage for the flex position. For this week, running back, right? This season is optimal to use a running back in the flex just because their pass catching abilities on DraftKings insane. But now we're in the playoffs, so it's a little bit less of a field we're working from. But we still have some good running backs in there, right? I mean, we have Damian Williams, just the dangerous Damian Williams nickname. Trying to get it. Big D doesn't work too much. People are already taking that. We got to think of some more Damian Williams names because he's going to be a stud next year in fantasy drafts. He's already a stud. But we got guys like Damian Williams who they're in that pass-catching role that are good two-way back. Obviously, Todd Gurley, Alvin Kamara, other types of guys like that as well. So yeah, these are situations where we do have some good players in there who are very fine to put all 3 of those guys in your lineup and put them in the flex. But there's ways to be creative and really take advantage of that. You can see right here during the regular season, and this week at least, and this is usually what the whole season looks like, give or take like 5 to 8 percentage points, maybe 10. Either way, 20% of the people were playing, so only a fifth of the field was putting a wide receiver there. Tight end, less than 10% was putting a tight end there, and this depends on which tight ends were on the slate, of course. But yeah, it's just different. It's being different, right, in that flex spot, being creative, not being worried. Because if you put a wide receiver or a tight end in your flex spot, you're automatically different than the field. You're probably going to stand out and not have to worry about having the same lineup as somebody else, even on a 2-game slate, depending on how much money you leave, things like that. But running backs, there's no reason. I'm not saying don't put a running back in there. I'm just giving you ways to be optimal, still get a good lineup, but also differentiate yourself. Winning the flex spot is one big way that everybody talks about. You win the flex spot, you set yourself apart. Win that pivotal spot, right? And you can do that by any position. Now, there's not a lot of tight ends on this type of slate. It's really just Rob Gronkowski, Travis Kelce, for the people watching this more recently. But whatever it might be, win that flex spot, make a good decision there. Maybe the flex spot is where you take your stand, right? Maybe that's like, okay, I'm going to put my Rex Burkhead in some of these lineups here. I'm going to put my role player in the NBA somewhere. I'm going to put this first baseman who hasn't been doing anything of late in this flex spot here, right? And that's where you take your stand. And if you win your stand in the flex spot, that's huge, right? You hit kind of your punt play or your scared play, and you won the flex spot just by doing that. So that's definitely huge, definitely something to also keep in mind while you do this. So next one up, late swap. We've talked about late swap. I did another episode on this a couple ones back for the NFL season. So late swap, now that it's kind of accepted in the NBA, it's been accepted in NFL. Late swap is good for DFS, and especially on these slates. These 2-game slates, you're going to have some time. It might not be much time, but you're going to have at least a good knowledge of what the fourth quarter is looking like, what your team's looking like. Probably have a half hour to an hour in the NFL to change up some of your lineups this weekend. And in 2-game slates. On bigger game slates in the NFL, you're going to have a whole day, maybe even 2 days if you're playing a Monday to Thursday slate. You have so much time to late swap. There's no reason not to be late swapping. See where you stand. See if you're in a position where if the players that you have in your lineup right now do what you expect them to do, that you could win some money. And if they don't, if you need them to do way too much, or you think that they're going to be over-owned, that's the big thing. If you think they're going to be way too owned, then you're going to have to switch out some punt plays, hope that somebody goes off. I know a notorious one this year, Amari Cooper's 50-burger game. Not a lot of people were on him, sub 10%. A lot of people late swapped to Amari Cooper in that game, and he won them a lot of money that they wouldn't have won in the first place. So don't leave money on the table. Make sure you're late swapping. That's another tip in there for you. Even on these 2-game slates, it's so important. It's the difference between maybe not winning $0 in the whole tournament, because that's going to be tough if you're late swapping and you're really desperate. But it's a difference between, in the long run, winning $0 if you're not doing any late swapping, and winning maybe $500 back, depending on how much you play. Even if you're winning $10 back, $20 back, because you took the extra 5 minutes to just change out some players, is that not worth it? If you're not doing it, it's just maybe because you don't know about it, but it's also just losing you money. So don't be lazy with that. Make sure you're late swapping. Another thing that I'll point out that doesn't really happen too much in 2-game slates unless there's some time in between them. So like in the NFL, when we have Sunday night, Monday night games, Monday night, Thursday night games, things like that. But this could also be if you have a 2-game slate where it's like an 8 o'clock and a 10 o'clock start. Lots of times the public doesn't like to wait, right? They want to put their money in the game so they could watch it and have something to do and have entertainment that night. And honestly, like, I'm probably a little bit of a fish because I like to do that sometimes as well. But it's important, especially when there's days in between. Like, people can't wait 2 days to see some of their players. They're going to load up on that first game. And you can analyze this and see, is that second game, like the actual game, has a higher Vegas total, has some better players overall, good positions, one team maybe has a better matchup. Is that second game a better overall game, or at least just about as even as this first game? Do I really want to load up on this first game when I know there's going to be inflated ownership because people don't want to wait? So make sure that you take that into account and fade that first game, play a good amount in the second game if there's some players, more than you actually would, or at least maybe 1 or 2 players more, and you're going to get lower ownership on those guys than they should be. And if that first game is filled with just bad players, bad teams, no matter the sport, they're going to end up busting probably anyways, and that just eliminates a bunch more people below you, pushes you up those rankings a little bit higher to get to that green cash line, which is where we all want to be, right? So lastly, this is just a thing that I kind of already talked on, but do what others won't. That's the biggest key in DFS, obviously, doing what others won't, being the optimal contrarian. I think I'm going to nickname maybe myself, maybe I'll self-name myself that. That's what I named in an article. Just optimal contrarian is I'm so interested in the way that people think, just psychology-wise. That's why I like marketing a lot, how you can get a message out to people and capture their attention, things like that, sell them on stuff. I'm so interested in the way that people think, and just contrarian and DFS just fits into that so well, because it's like the stock market, right? The stock market's made up on people's emotions. It's the same way with DFS. It's made up on people's emotions, how the media inflates those emotions, projection systems people think are a golden rule when most of the time they don't hit as often as people believe they do, things like that. So I'm very interested in contrarian nature and doing things that others won't, but being optimal at the same time. Some of the ways to be optimal are stuff that we've talked about on this channel before, even in this video before. Just make sure you play the good players, right? It's as simple as that. That's the easiest step. Make sure you're playing good players, but on 2-game slates, maybe there's a situation where you're still playing a good player, not playing a min-price guy who sees 5 snaps. Rex Burkhead, I'm not going to sit here and say he's a great player, but when he gets his touches, he's very efficient with those touches over the past 2 to 3 years, really his whole career, even with the Bengals. But guys like that, make sure you're giving yourself a chance to actually win some money. If it ends up happening that some random guy catches an 80-yard touchdown and some max lineup projections have him, then so be it, right? I mean, if you have actually played him, it would have been a negative decision if you do that throughout the long run. So make sure you're doing things others won't. So like this week, telling myself that out loud actually makes me think about it a little bit more. We got a guy like Sony Michel, a guy like CJ Anderson coming off big games. They don't catch the ball at all. People are going to say, fade them, like that was just a once-in-a-while thing. Maybe it takes a little bit deeper looking into it because they both have been having good seasons in the games that they've played in, right? And they both have relatively decent matchups this week. So could be, well, actually one of them does. CJ Anderson doesn't. But anyways, regardless, whoever was watching the sports-wise, maybe that doesn't even relate to you. if you're watching this in the future, you know what happens. So shout out, let me know down below what happens if you know in time. That makes no sense, but these are just some tips. All right, so just trying to give you guys some tips here on how to be more contrarian on these smaller slates, and really just a strategy, somewhere to go into it with. Think a little bit differently because you have to. There's less players to choose from, so you have to make sure that you're getting the best optimal lineups out there and setting yourself apart, setting yourself up to win if certain things happen or certain things don't happen, right? So think about all those things. Appreciate it if you guys are still watching this. If I've had your attention for 20 minutes, that's incredible. I think the average attention span's 4 or 5 minutes. But if you're still watching this at this point, comment down below that you're still watching. I'd appreciate that. Also, jump into the contest for this week if you're watching it. Who's going to be the highest scoring running back on the slate? You can drop that down below. DraftKings points, $10 PayPal. I know I'm mentioning this all late, but just hop into that Facebook group. Check out the blog, dailyfantasyassist.com, that I went. I'm trying to do this as a full-time career, trying to get some jobs at some companies, so I'd appreciate it if you could drop anything down below in the comment section. Helps this channel out. Like it, subscribe if you're at this point. Thank you so much, guys. Best of luck this weekend. Best of luck whenever you're watching this in your DFS career. Download also that PDF because it will help you. I'm telling you right now, it will help you. People have said it, and I've gotten some good words back about it, and I love that. So I want to make sure if I could help, if I'm helping them, that I could also help you. So check that all out, guys. Download this or comment below if you like this video. Appreciate it. My name's Sal. Peace.